Most people think becoming a high-value woman after divorce means learning how to attract better men, look more confident, or prove that your life is still desirable from the outside. I think that belief keeps more women stuck than the divorce itself. Because some of the most unhappy women I have met after 60 were still trying to be chosen, while some of the strongest and most fulfilled women I have known had quietly stopped caring whether anyone chose them at all. That sounds backwards, doesn't it? After all, many of us were raised to believe that being chosen was the reward. First by a boyfriend, then by a husband, then by the life we built together. So when a marriage ends, it can feel as if something much bigger has ended with it. Not just the relationship, but your value, your identity, even your future. But what if becoming a high-value woman again has nothing to do with finding someone new? What if it begins the moment you stop seeing divorce as proof that something is wrong with you, stop waiting for someone else to tell you who you are, and start building a life that feels meaningful, whether anyone joins you or not? Because I have come to believe that the women who recover most beautifully after divorce are not the ones who get into another relationship first. They are the ones who finally come home to themselves. Stop feeling embarrassed about being divorced. A woman can spend 30 years building a family, supporting a husband, raising children, holding a household together through illnesses, financial stress, and all the ordinary challenges of life. Then the marriage ends, and suddenly the story she tells herself becomes very small. I failed. I have heard those words more times than I can count. What strikes me is that many of these women would never speak so harshly to a friend. If a close friend divorced after 30 years, they would probably say, "You did your best." They would say, "Life is complicated." They would say, "One ending does not erase everything that came before it." Yet when it comes to themselves, many women carry a quiet embarrassment that follows them for years. They avoid talking about the divorce. They change the subject when people ask questions. They feel uncomfortable introducing themselves as divorced. Some even feel they have to explain what happened, as though they owe the world a detailed account of why their marriage did not survive. I don't believe that embarrassment belongs there. One reason I feel strongly about this comes from the work of sociologist Susan Brown at Bowling Green State University. Her research helped bring attention to what is now called gray divorce, the growing number of divorces among adults over 50. What that research quietly reveals is that many people are rebuilding their lives later than previous generations ever imagined. You are not a strange exception. You are part of a reality that millions of people are living. And more importantly, a marriage ending is not evidence that the years inside it had no value. The love may have been real. The effort may have been real. The memories may have been real. The fact that something ended does not automatically turn everything before it into a mistake. I think one of the most powerful moments after divorce comes when a woman stops asking, "How do I explain this?" and starts asking, "What do I want the next chapter of my life to become?" That shift changes everything, because embarrassment keeps your eyes on the past. Self-respect allows you to look forward. And a high-value woman is not the woman who never experienced heartbreak. She is the woman who refuses to let heartbreak become her identity. Once a woman stops carrying embarrassment about the divorce, she often discovers something unexpected. There are parts of herself she hasn't seen in years, not because they disappeared, but because marriage required them to wait. Reclaim the parts of yourself marriage put on hold. Think about the last time you picked up something you used to love just for yourself, with no one else in the room needing you to be something else. If you have to think hard to remember when that was, this point is for you. Marriage asks for compromise. That's normal and even healthy. But somewhere between raising children, building a household, and keeping a partnership steady, many women quietly set down small parts of who they were before the ring went on. Not because anyone demanded it outright. Divorce, because it was easier in the moment to choose marriage over the painting class, the choir, the old friendship, the unfinished degree. Maybe it was the language course you started and never went back to. Maybe it was the friend you stopped calling because your husband never warmed to her. Maybe it was the small business idea you mentioned once at dinner and then never again. Maybe it was simply time alone, the kind where nobody needed anything from you. None of that disappeared because it didn't matter. Disappeared because there were only so many hours, and someone in the house always seemed to need them more than you did. Here is where I stand on this, plainly. Reclaiming those parts of yourself is not selfish, and it is not too late. I will not pretend both sides of that argument carry equal weight. A woman who spends 30 years prioritizing everyone else's calendar has more than earned the right to look at her own. Time use researchers who track how American adults spend their days through the federal government's American Time Use Survey have shown for years that married women consistently report less personal leisure time than married men, even after accounting for paid work. That gap doesn't close on its own. Someone has to decide to close it. This isn't about resentment toward the marriage or the person inside it. It's about noticing what got quietly archived on a shelf you stopped opening. The painting class is still real. The choir is still rehearsing on Tuesdays. The friend's number hasn't changed. You don't need permission to reach for any of it. You only need to remember it's still there. So here's a question worth sitting with for a moment. What did you put down somewhere along the way that you forgot you were even still holding? Build a future that doesn't depend on being chosen. What if no one ever chose you again? I know that sounds like a harsh question, but stay with me for a moment. What if there was no new relationship waiting around the corner? No unexpected romance, no companion arriving to rescue you from loneliness? What if no one appeared to reassure you that you are still lovable, desirable, worthy? Would your future still feel meaningful? I think this may be one of the most important questions a woman can ask herself after divorce. Because many of us were raised with a story that quietly shaped the way we see ourselves. It told us that happiness arrives when someone chooses us. Then, first a boyfriend, then a husband, then perhaps a family built together. For decades, being chosen felt connected to belonging, security, and identity. Then life unfolds differently than expected. A marriage ends, a partner leaves, the future takes a turn we never planned for, and suddenly a woman finds herself standing at a crossroads she never imagined she would reach. This is where I believe many women accidentally give away their power. Not because they are weak, but because they are waiting. waiting for the next relationship, waiting for someone to make life feel complete again, waiting for permission to start living fully. I do not believe a high-value woman waits there forever. Meaningful future cannot depend entirely on another person arriving. That creates a life built on circumstances you cannot control. A stronger future is built around things that remain yours, regardless of who enters or leaves your life. That is not giving up on love. It is refusing to postpone your life until love appears. Strangely enough, I have noticed that women who do this often become more attractive, not less. Not because they are trying harder, but because they are no longer carrying the quiet desperation that comes from waiting to be chosen. There is a different energy around someone who is already building a life she enjoys. She is not asking another person to save her. She is inviting them to share something she has already begun creating. To me, that is what becoming a high-value woman again truly looks like after divorce. Not proving your worth, not finding a replacement relationship, not convincing someone to stay. It is building a future so rich with meaning that whether someone joins you or not, that future remains worth walking toward. Choose your life first. The rest becomes much clearer after that. As we come to the end of this conversation, I want to leave you with one final thought. For a long time, many women believed that becoming valuable again after divorce meant proving something, proving they were still attractive, still wanted, still capable of finding love. But the women I admire most are rarely focused on proving anything at all. They are focused on living. They build friendships. They rediscover old passions. They create routines that bring them peace. They make plans for next month, next year, and sometimes even 10 years from now. Not because they know exactly what the future holds, but because they have decided that their future still matters. That, to me, is the real transformation. A high-value woman is not defined by the marriage she lost, the person who left, or the relationship that didn't last. She is defined by her willingness to keep growing after all of it. When someone wonderful enters her life, she welcomes it. Even when no one does, her life remains full, because she no longer measures her worth by whether she is chosen. If this conversation spoke to your heart, I hope you'll subscribe and join us for future conversations. And if you're comfortable sharing, tell me in the comments. What is one part of yourself you are reclaiming in this chapter of your life?